So I made a video about that cop from South Carolina, Michael Thomas Slager, and how he shot Walter Scott in his back. He fired 8 rounds at this man after a traffic stop, and he struck him with 5 of those 8 rounds as he ran away. Now, the shooting's been under a lot of scrutiny and whatnot, and people don't really understand that this is part of a bigger ritual that's been going on a really, really, really long time, and it's basically a tradition to white supremacists at this point. Now, power is a drug. Power is intoxicating, and white supremacists feel empowered and entitled. Black people, so-called, feel defeated and guilty. People often ask, what are the white supremacists doing? The people who act as if they don't know what the hell is going on. Then they ask, well, how are they doing it? And also, how are they getting away with it? And I think that these questions are just fine and dandy. And I really do think that they need to be answered. See, the thing is, a lot of people go asking questions like that, but they don't really actually want to come up with the answers for these things and then come up with actual solutions to the problems. People just want to point at different things and say, look at what's going on here. I'm shaking my damn head. And that right there doesn't help anyone or anything. So we all know that they're out here committing vicious acts of police brutality. They're shooting people, they're killing people, they're beating people up, and they're getting away with it because this ritual has become habitual. People are used to it now, and people are pretty much looking for it now. They're rather looking forward to hearing these stories. They're getting off on this. They're energy vampires. They're getting something energetically by seeing people being destroyed. Now, these murders and beatings, etc., are America's history. They're not a small part of America's history, but rather a staple in American history. Police brutality and abuse of authority are simply supply and demand. Caucasians are the majority number-wise, and the white supremacist part of the Caucasian population feel that they can do this, so why not? People are allowing them to. There's lots of things that we can do to stop it, like develop zero tolerance policies for police departments. We can police our own neighborhoods. That's another thing that we can do. Even though at the end of the day, the God's honest truth is this. As far as white on white crime, however you want to put it, comes from people who actually want to commit crimes but have choices, generally speaking. Now, so-called black on black crime pretty much comes from social, economical reasons. If you really think about it, like, you don't usually really see so-called black people who come from generations of affluence and wealth. You don't see people like who were from, let's say, upper middle class neighborhoods who were so-called black people from several generations really getting into big trouble. It's almost unheard of. It's pretty much people who are poor, or people who are nouveau riche or newly rich, people that you see getting into these troubles, like certain musicians and whatnot. But it's pretty much an extreme rarity to see a so-called black person who comes from something, whose parents came from something, getting into some BS. It's almost unheard of. But I think I'm going to have to break down those topics another time because I don't have enough time in this video. I don't want to make it too long. But what I wanted to touch on was something that people really don't want to talk about, that they're really hiding their heads in the ground like an ostrich. They're really, really, really trying to save face when it comes to this discussion, which is the fact that Caucasian people have played over the thought of murdering, torturing, and beating so-called black people over and over and over again in their head. It's like a movie inside of their mind where they keep trying to visualize them beating on so-called black people, just like so-called black people have the image in their minds of these beatings happening and these murders happening. And pretty much what it deals with is the law of attraction, like attracting like, and basically energetically so-called black people have been seeing these scenes play over and over again in their minds. And just when you forgot that these things happen, here comes a new news story to remind you, focus on this. Pretty much what we need to do is get these thoughts out of our minds. And it doesn't mean that we don't talk or think about what's going on, because that won't help the issues either. What we need to be doing is focusing on solutions. And we all know that so-called black people, like I said, have deeply rooted economical issues, whereas Caucasian people, well, the stuff that they're doing just comes from a lot of them just really actually being sick. Because if you really think about it, like I said, you know, they keep playing these things over and over and over again in their minds because they're obsessed and they're possessed. They're obsessed with so-called black people. A lot of so-called white people will befriend a so-called black person just to feel as if they're important and powerful, just so that they can feel worshipped by this so-called black person. If you really think about it, a lot of them don't really like so-called black people, but they'll have a fake black friend who will be the so-called token Negro, as they call them. And that person, actually, I think on South Park they had a so-called black character named Token. You know, like they'll be the one brown spot in the snow. They're like a freaking piece of coal in the snow. That's all they are. And it's crazy because the way that so-called black people think about so-called white people is way different than the way that these white supremacists think about so-called blacks. If you really think about it, so-called black supremacists will say, well, I don't really fuck with white people, and just leave them alone. Now, a so-called white supremacist, on the other hand, will want to keep you close to them, which you know, you got to ask yourself something. What type of sicko says, I don't like you, but I want you near me? You know, what's going on in that person's mind? You know, these sick, twisted, demonic entities are so obsessed with talking about us that they even sing songs about us. Now, they've been outed numerous times recently for chanting and singing about loving to kill so-called black people. For example, Canadian pop star Justin Bieber was about 14 years old or so when he sang about joining the KKK and killing a black person, so there'll be, quote, one less lonely N-word. Then, of course, there was the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity who sang about how there'll never be an N-word at say. And we can't forget about the time that the white supremacists thought there was no better of a time than at a charity for police officers to celebrate a white on black murder. A band sang a song celebrating the death of shooting victim Mike Brown. Now, the lyrics compared him to a dog, and they sang about how he's the, quote, deadest man in the whole damn town. You got to ask yourself, what type of mind, what type of warped mentality does a person have to sing songs about killing people, right? Now, when these white supremacist thugs aren't singing about killing quote unquote black people, they're shooting targets at shooting ranges so that they can have the image of shooting them fresh in their mind. It is possible that visualizing the sight of the shooting victims, in my opinion, visualizing it is contributing to all of this white on black crime and death. I mean, how could we forget about the time the Miami Police Department got caught using black mugshots as targets? And of course, there was that Florida police officer, Ron King, who was fired for using Trayvon Martin targets as aides at the shooting range. But it's not just police officers who were in on this sick game, because it's regular, everyday, so-called white folks, pink people, that are getting in on the gag too. Because I know you had to hear about what happened at that gun show, right? A South Dakota vendor was confronted at the Sioux Falls Collectors Classic Gun Show after he was caught selling, quote, official running inward targets that depicted a so-called black man who was actually drawn black. He was running, he was butt naked, he had an afro, big poked out lips. Hell, they even included a little line on the paper for you to shoot to keep score of how many times you shot the running inward. But hey, if you're a so-called black man, don't fret. Don't get upset. They're not just only targeting so-called blacks. These demons hate Muslims too. I mean, they even made G-Hog bullets for them. Yes, G-Hog. You know, pork bullets. Yeah, the Christian white supremacist thugs made bullets with pork in them so that they could, quote, send Muslims straight to hell. And no, I'm not kidding. You can check it out for yourself on my blog. You click the link below and you scroll down towards the end of the blog. I have news videos and news articles about all of this stuff. I'm not just making this up. You can see for yourself. The Trayvon Martin hoodie thing, the running inwards target thing, the black mugshots thing, even the G-Hog bullets thing. And if you don't want to visit my blog for whatever reason, look this stuff up for yourself. And by the way, G-Hog is spelled Jihawg. But this just goes to show how full of hatred these white supremacists are and how dangerous these demons truly are. Because you have to ask yourself, what type of person sits around and obsesses and is possessed with the hatred and evil that they have of another person to come up with products to sell to each other so that they can sit up there and basically premeditate murder? Because if you think about it, this is where they are. They have life so freaking easy. Things are given to them. There's a system set up to protect them and to coddle them. Things are so easy for them to the point where they can literally make targets of people based off race and make bullets to specifically kill groups of people. But remember, it's the so-called black people, according to them, that are racist, and the so-called black people who are the thugs and criminals and have the criminal mind, according to them. My whole point is, if you put all of this together, this is why we have hashtags on social media exclaiming hashtag Black Lives Matter. Since people keep asking, why do we need that? They matter because you're putting up targets, even including police departments, racially targeting people. Now, with all of that said, I do not believe that mandatory body cameras will fix all of these problems. I do, however, believe it will stop some of this terrorism from occurring. Now, if we have billions and trillions of dollars to pay for the military to commit illegal acts of war around the planet, we can afford body cameras for every goddamn cop. And if they make a certain amount of money, like if the police officer, for example, makes $50,000 a year or more, certain detectives and chiefs and whatnot, they can pay for it themselves. And if they don't want to, they can quit. Schools have a zero tolerance policy for children, and it's about time we use one of those zero tolerance policies. We need to develop one and implement it for these bastards and badges. Because if not, it's only going to get worse, guys. But I think that things are going to get better. I think that they've gotten a little bit too big for their britches. I think that they've crossed the line now where there's going to be hell to pay. And the backlash is something that they really, really did not ever expect. And actually, they have all of that damn military equipment. I think that they thought that the backlash was going to be physical because we were going to get up to a point where people were going to start attacking them physically. But at the end of the day, I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think that the people are going to attack them physically. I think that people have been worn down mentally to the point where they feel as if physically doing anything to these so-called authority figures, it will be too much of a risk for their personal lives. I think people feel like they have too much to lose, so that's not going to happen. But what is going to happen is new laws are going to be created. Not just the body cameras and the zero tolerance policy, but also these police officers who cover up crimes and they have this, the police and the military have a don't snitch policy. They're out here raping women and children and shooting people in the head and whatnot and getting away with it for now. But when these zero tolerance policies become implemented, which I'm going to fight for, these thugs and badges are going to have to stop committing these vicious acts of terrorism. But this is all my opinion. Let me know what you think about it all below. Be sure to subscribe to the Meat Magazine YouTube channel. Visit meatmagazine.blogspot.com for more. And remember, click the link below and you can see those news stories for yourself with the different videos about the G-Hog bullets running inward targets, the mugshots targets, and the Trayvon Martin hoodie target. Oh, I even posted the songs that they were singing, like the Justin Bieber song, "There'll Never Be an N-Word to Say," and the Michael Brown song about him being the deadest man and the whole damn time. Yeah, I posted links to all of that shit up there. Just scroll down to the bottom. Let me know what you think about it. Meat Magazine.